Bro.
At the beginning of the film, we are shown with three young school heroes who appear to be respected and feared by the students at the school, and this boy is Miles, the leader of the small gang. It is told that their daily habit at school is to bully students there without exception to our main character named Jimmy. Almost every day, Jimmy is bullied by the three young men, and sure enough today, Jimmy began to be bullied by them. It seems that Jimmy is a good boy. He never even replies to their behavior either, for reasons of fear, or indeed he has a big heart. Shortly from that incident, two other students came and they were named Andy and Bobby. They were both close friends of Jimmy. Then the story moves to Jimmy's residence. He seems to have a family that is so harmonious that even when they eat together, here Jimmy's father tries to support his son to continue socializing, especially with women, but Jimmy says he is too insecure to do it all. The next day on a bright morning, Jimmy, Andy, and Bobby went to school together. Along the way, they exchanged stories and joked together until a group of Miles came who intended to bother them. Bobby seemed to run away first, leaving Andy and Jimmy in the hands of the thugs. Not enough to bully them, Miles also asked for $100 from the two of them, which Jimmy immediately refused because he did not have that much money. By the way, $100 for a child his age is quite a lot, especially since we know Jimmy is just an ordinary school student who does not have any income. Getting that rejection, of course, Miles was upset, but he understood and would ask again another time. Then the story moves to the classroom, shown in the middle of teaching and learning. Bobby, who had escaped earlier, now can no longer run from the bullying of the bullies. Miles seemed brave enough to do his bullying, even in front of the teacher at the school. At break time, Bobby, who seemed to be sitting pensive in the school corridor, tried to be strengthened by Jimmy. Even Jimmy offered a treat in the school canteen to cheer him up. At the cafeteria, Andy and Bobby looked astonished by Jimmy. They both wondered why his friend ate with a larger portion than usual. The peaceful period seemed short-lived to them because Miles, the main antagonist in this story, came back to disturb them, and now he asked for another $100 that he had asked for earlier in the morning. Miles' arrival was not only disliked by the three of them, it even seemed that some of the students there were very disturbed by Miles's behavior. Seen from one of the students who was not far from there who tried to reprimand Miles's behavior. The pretentious young man, of course, did not accept it. He even almost tried to beat the student who had reprimanded him until another student with a bigger body came and made him forced to leave. Miles' bullying that day was not over, and now Jimmy was stopped on his way home. Again and again, for the third time that day, Miles asked for the $100 he asked for earlier. Now even he was really upset after the embarrassing incident in the cafeteria earlier, but Jimmy refused again, not only because he didn't have the money, but he also felt he had no obligation to give that much money to Miles. Hearing that, of course, Miles did not accept it. He cursed at Jimmy and now even beat him up. Punches and kicks continued to be thrown by Miles until finally it was lucky for Jimmy that the owner of the house nearby came out to evict Miles. After driving away the bully, Jackson also treated Jimmy's wounds. While treating Jimmy's wounds, the middle-aged man also told him about his background as a heavyweight boxing veteran. He also told him about his career in boxing and how long he had been doing the sport. Jimmy, who listened to it, was like getting motivation. Without further ado, he immediately showed his interest in the world of boxing and even asked Jason to train him. With the excuse of self-defense and eliminating bullying in his school, Jimmy continues to ask and try to convince Jackson to train him. Hearing the wise intentions and reasons, Jackson agreed to Jimmy's request, even though he said he could not directly train Jimmy because of his age and health, but he would send Jimmy to his acquaintances to be trained. In short, Jimmy was taken home by Jackson, and when he arrived home, Jimmy's parents were very shocked by his son's condition. There, Jackson explained clearly the chronology of the incident before he returned home. The next day, Jimmy and his parents came to Jackson's house. Here, Jimmy's intention was clear. He seriously asked Jackson to train him immediately. Jane Short, now the small family, was taken by Jackson to a boxing training ground owned by his acquaintance, and that person was Manny, the boxing trainer and Jackson's acquaintance in question. There, Jackson introduced and told Manny about Jimmy's intention. After hearing the explanation without further ado, Manny accepted the offer and was ready to train Jimmy. He only told Jimmy to be truly dedicated to his training. The next day, Jimmy, who was taken directly by Jackson, arrived at the boxing training ground yesterday. He looked very serious, listening to Manny's advice and practicing on his first day. After the tiring training, Jackson took Jimmy home. On the way home, Jimmy told about his daily life and his friends at school who were often bullied by several people, especially Miles. He also told about the $100 that Miles kept asking for. Here, Jackson advised Jimmy to just say yes to Miles's request. Jackson even explained that if Jimmy was ready to fight, he suggested promising Miles $200 on the condition that the delivery time be extended. Jackson hoped that when the due date arrived, Jimmy would have the ability to protect himself or even fight Miles. The next day at school, Jimmy was again visited by Miles and his group with the intention of asking for $100 yesterday. Jimmy, who had already received advice from Jackson last night, asked Miles for a 1-month period of time on the grounds that he would double the money to $200, and without thinking, Miles agreed to Jimmy's tactic. After facing a tough time at school, Jimmy went straight home to the boxing gym to train with Manny, but not like on his first day, because in today's training, Jimmy seemed uninspired. Seeing that Manny asked about Jimmy's condition, which seemed sluggish and uninspired, and Jimmy replied that he had run out of energy today because of the tough time he had at school. After hearing that, Manny immediately told Jackson where Jackson said he would motivate Jimmy to continue training. After training on the way home, Jackson asked why Jimmy was sluggish at training today. Jimmy said he was pessimistic about his plans and intentions. He felt that a month of boxing training would not allow him to beat Miles or even protect himself from bullying. Seeing his discouraged student, Jackson of course could not remain silent. He tried to motivate Jimmy to continue to be optimistic about all his intentions and plans. In the end, it paid off, and now Jimmy is back on his way, and his spirit is alive again. The next day at school, Jimmy, Andy, and Bobby were visited by Miles's group, and as usual, they came with the intention of disturbing and bullying the three of them. At this moment, Miles also warned Jimmy not to break his promise yesterday, because if he broke his promise, Miles said he would not hesitate to beat the three of them. Bobby, who had been beaten again, was visited by Jimmy to try to comfort him. Here, Jimmy is increasingly motivated to train to protect his friends from bullying. Sure enough, in the boxing gym today, Jimmy looked very serious and very eager to train, so excited that Jimmy accidentally hit Manny. The next day in the school cafeteria, Jimmy promised Andy that he would beat Miles someday. He also told him about the boxing training he was going through with Manny. In the middle of telling the story, suddenly a girl came up to them, and the woman was named Adriana. She planned to invite Jimmy to go to a party later night held by one of their friends. Jimmy, who was not happy, immediately agreed to the invitation. In short, now the story moves to the party venue. In that night, it seems that Jimmy and Adriana began to show their feelings for each other, and the party night now turns into a date night for them. When the two lovebirds were making out, suddenly came one of Miles's men. But now Jimmy did not give the young man time to bully him, because he now seemed to have enough guts to protect himself. In short now, time continues to pass, and day after day, Jimmy passes with hard training, not even just boxing. He also learns other martial arts techniques to make him stronger. Until finally, the day of the agreement arrived, and that morning Miles asked for his money to be given after school later. Jimmy, who had indeed changed, looked undaunted by the threat. During a break in the school toilet, Jimmy accidentally met a student named James, and there James told about Jimmy's training at the boxing gym that he had seen. It turned out he also knew that Jimmy had been training hard to fight back against Miles today, and he left after giving Jimmy moral encouragement. The conversation was apparently heard by one of Miles's men, who immediately reported the information. Knowing Jimmy's plan, Miles now came back to devise a cunning strategy. He planned to ask for help from one of his acquaintances named Glassjaw to help him beat Jimmy. Meanwhile, James, who was listening to their conversation, was also planning something for Miles and his men. The bell rang, signaling school dismissal time had arrived, and outside the school students were gathered to see Miles and Jimmy's heated encounter. Jimmy stepped his feet while saying he would not give the money he had promised. He said he would only teach Miles a lesson. Miles, who already knew Jimmy's plan, didn't seem surprised to hear Jimmy's challenge because he had also made plans to beat the hell out of Jimmy. He now challenges Jimmy to fight his acquaintance first before dealing with him, and the person Miles is referring to is on his way. The tattooed man looks very strong, and the man keeps walking until finally someone seems to be holding him from behind. Time passes. Miles begins to wonder why Glassjaw doesn't come. In the midst of his worries, James says that his acquaintance has beaten and kidnapped Glassjaw. Miles, who has now realized the reason why Glassjaw did not come, was finally forced to take matters into his own hands to beat Jimmy. The fight between the two students finally began, and it was seen that students and even teachers were watching the fight. Jimmy was hit by the first punch that made him fall, but he immediately got up and tried to hit Miles back. He continued to give Miles a fierce fight until Miles asked for help from his colleagues, which was then immediately stopped by the students and Jimmy's friends there. The one-on-one fight continued, and they were seen taking turns launching their respective attacks. Until finally, Jimmy now looked more dominant, and he even had time to advise Miles in the middle of the fight. The fight ended with Jimmy's hard punch that made Miles fall. At home, it turned out that the video of Jimmy's fight with Miles yesterday had made national news. The news quickly spread throughout the city. Even Jimmy's parents couldn't hold back their pride in their only child who managed to defeat the bully. Back at school, along his steps, Jimmy was now seen as a hero. The nerdy boy had now turned into a hero for the students at his school because of his success in eliminating bullying at the school, and the film ended.